students, welcome to Photoshop and this tutorial for select and clipping. I brought in a photo of a landscape, and the landscape's ideal for this assignment. And I want to fix this because you can see that it has problems. The clouds were shifting and I lost some light, and my settings suddenly were much different than I had intended, and I lost a lot of light due to those clouds, beautiful clouds passing over. But I want to fix it. But I also want to separate my sky from my foreground and the river. So I'm going to use the quick selection tool to separate that sky and kind of mask it out. So here we go. First thing I'm going to do is duplicate this layer. So I right click, say duplicate layer, and I'm just going to call this layer the sky.
SKY.
And say OK. Okay. Then I'm going to go get the quick selection tool, which if you have a single file line in Photoshop, it's the fourth tool down. I right click on it, and I don't want the object selection, I want the quick selection tool. And with that tool, I'm just going to come out and drag it till it selects my sky, and you see that it did. And I want to refine that edge so it looks real nice. And I go up to the top and I just say select and mask, and it opens my screen to this. The edge detection, and that's going to be, I'm not so much worried about the top of my frame, I'm worried about the selection around this mountain range, or ridge I should say. And I'm going to go to the edge radius, and I'm going to flip that to about 3 pixels. Or you can just type it in, I suppose. I'm going to go to the smoothness on the global refinements, and I'm going to type in 3 for that as well. The feather, I'm going to choose 5 on that. 5 pixels.
5.
Contrast I will set to 3. And the shift edge, I'm not going to touch that. I'm just going to hit OK. And I have my layer and my selection going around it. I'm going to go from there, and I'm going to add a layer mask. I come down here, add the layer mask, and I have the sky on there. I'm going to add a levels layer. So I go down to my half moon or adjustment layer icon, click on that, and I go up to levels. And here's the key. I want to create clipping mask for what I do, because I'm going to work on the sky at this point and then come back and work on the foreground, the river and the ridge around it. So I just want to add this level layers just to my sky. So I right click and I say create clipping mask. Now when I come up to the top of my graph up here and I move this lever, you'll see that I'm only affecting the sky. Okay? So first I'm just gonna go do an auto color correct on it. Let Photoshop tell me what's the correct color. And then I'm gonna move my middle triangle lever until I get this kind of dynamic, beautiful clouded sky with some blue in the back and that nice gold sun coming through there. And it looks great. I'm gonna come up again and I'm gonna add another level or layer. And this time I'm gonna add a curves layer. And the first thing I'm gonna do is right click on it and say create clipping mask. Because if I don't, I'm gonna affect the whole picture. And I just wanna work on that sky for now. I'm gonna make 2 points on that. I'm gonna dip the lower one down a little bit to get some dynamics in those dark shadows of those darker clouds, just a little bit, and then raise the top point up a little bit. I'm looking at that very top part of the sun coming through there, and finding a nice spot to where it's not too intense. And I'm going to go with that for now. Your photo may adjust a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to add one more layer. Adjustment layer. I'm coming down to the half moon, and I'm going to go up to hue and saturation. And again, I'm going to right click and create a clipping mask. I'm going to go up to the hue and look at that a little bit, and I'm going to see what the blueness of that sky, what I want it to be. Definitely don't want to go too much. But if I was started out at 0, I think I'm going to go to the right about, maybe 10, 13. I'm at 13. The saturation, I'll move that back and forth and decide how much of that blue I want saturated. I'm a little bit about +7, and then I'm just going to move the lightness back and forth. And you'll see I can add lightness to that, and it's kind of what I did with the levels layer. So I want that nice dynamic dark kind of contrast going there. So I'm pretty much going to leave that where it was. I think I'm at +4. Okay, I'm good for there. I'm going to go back to the background layer, not the sky layer. So I'm going on to my original layer, and guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to add a levels layer, yes. And I'm going to create a clipping mask for that, so that when I move that triangle in the levels graph there, I'm only going to be affecting the foreground. Okay? So first thing I'm going to do, since I have all the color there, I'm going to auto correct the color and then come down and move that lever. I'm going to look at the ones on the right and left a little bit, but I'm basically choosing the center one. So I don't want it to look too fake or anything, but I do want to bring back some that. I'm going to stop right there, and I'm going to go get the curves layer and see what that does. I'm going to add the curves layer to the bottom part of this and make sure I add the clipping mask. And then I'm going to make 2 points on this, drag that lower one down. So I don't want to make it too dark, because I already had dark, right? But I'm looking at those colors, and I'm going to add a hue and saturation layer, so I'm not too worried about it. So this may change, the curves, or what you do with the curves will be, different for each photo that you may have. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to go down and add my hue and saturation and see what I can do with the color. I'm creating a clipping mask for that as well. And I'm just going to look at the hues. So some of this wild sage I see down there, I really like that redness of that. And I'm looking at the redness of those rocks up there. So it's pretty spot on. I think I'm going to go about -2 on that. My saturation, I like that green that it really brought out when I went to the right and added. I'm going to leave it at +8. And then the lightness and darkness. I like it a little dark. Right? Okay. I think it looks great. Much better than it did. Okay, so I'm there. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the original layer. And I never did take that lock off. I'm going to take the lock off. I want to create a stamp on this. And I'm looking at this, the more I look at this, I don't like this lightness of this. These mountains right here in the foreground. Seem they're very light. I want to darken those up. I'm going to go to the very top of the bottom. So I'm down on the bottom, the foreground, and I'm going to click on the hue and saturation because that was the last layer I added. I'm going to add a curves layer, and I'm going to do something I showed you once before. So add the curves layer, and I'm going to come up to the blend mode and change it to multiply. And you see it creates it very dark. And then I'm going to hit Command I to invert it on my keyboard. That's the Command key. I'm holding that down and then hitting the I key. Now I'm going to go get a brush. I'm going to make sure that foreground is, if I look at the foreground, I want white in the foreground because my mask is black. And I'm just going to grab a brush and I'm going to zoom in on that, my photo, pressing Command plus to zoom in. And I'm just going to come over to these rocks back here. And I want to darken them up a little bit. So with my brush, I'm going to set the opacity about 50 up on the option bar. I don't want to overdo it right away. And I should be able to just start brushing on there, and I am. And I'm just darkening that up. You can see when I'm this close up that that edge of that range up there that we separated from the sky with the selection, it's got a little glow on it because when we added the curves and levels layer to our top sky, it kind of really affected that edge. I'm going to show you how to fix that too. So I'm just mapping out this one part of this ridge here. I'm going to make my brush bigger. Come in there. So I'm only doing this little section because I'm going to come back and I'm going to move this opacity up a little bit. I'm going to come back and I'm going to do that other part, but I'm going to do it a little bit less. Okay. All right, now I'm going to take my opacity down to like 25 on this next section because it's darker and I want a little bit of a difference on this. All right, so just cleaning that up. Working pretty quickly. I probably would do a little bit better job, but for the sake of time, I'm doing this quickly. So, you know, you may be saying to yourself, does it really matter that I'm darkening these little light spots on here? I just don't want anything, whenever I do an effect, I add a mask, or you know, selecting mask something out, I don't want it to be noticeable. I don't want it to catch my viewer's eye. I want them to just be looking at the photo and not going, hey, what's that there? Okay, so I darkened that. Like I said, I had this little bit of glow around this ridge. You can see it really good right there. I'm gonna fix that too. And if I zoom out, I like that. I like it a lot. Okay, I think that looks a little bit better. I might want to even darken this a little bit. I think I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna make my brush pretty big. and just go over this a little bit. This right there. Yeah. Blends out. Okay. And then I'm going to take it down a little bit more, just so it's blending in. Yeah, looks good. Okay. Much better. It was bothering me that that light was kind of sticking out there. All right, so if I look at my photo, I like it a lot. It looks much better than it did. I'm gonna do the last little bit of touches. I'm gonna sharpen it a little bit. I'm gonna go up to my very top layer, right? If I'm on a different layer and I add another effect, it's gonna go right on top of that layer. So I always choose the top layer when I'm adding something new. And I'm just gonna put a stamp on this. And yeah, before I do that though, I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. And I'm gonna try to get rid of that glow, okay, that I was showing you there. See that little glow that's going around this ridge? So the way I do that is I'm gonna go to the sky layer, and I'm gonna click on that layer mask we made, and I'm gonna press Command T on my keyboard. And when I do that, I've selected the sky. So I can move it down just by hitting my down arrow key on my keyboard. And I should be able to move that down. And I did. And you'll see that little glow that we had, it just went away. Now I'm gonna have to crop this a little bit because there's gonna be a little bit of a gap at the top of my photo. I'm gonna zoom back out and I can see it, yeah. But I'm gonna hit my check mark and I see that little thing. I'm just gonna grab my crop tool real quick and bring that down a little bit. And hit okay. But I don't have that glow going around there, that ridge with that selection. So it looks cool, looks a lot better. Okay, with the top layer selected, I'm gonna press Command, Option, and Shift, and the letter E, and you'll see it takes all my work and puts it onto one stamp. Then, I think I'm done. I think the only thing I'm gonna do is just sharpen it a little bit. So I'm gonna hold the Command and Shift key down and hit the letter U on my keyboard. And it turns my photo to black and white temporarily. And from here I'm going up to Filter, and I'm going down to Other, and I'm putting a high pass filter on this. When this comes up, the tab of high pass, I'm just going to put a 2.0 pixels radius on it, hit OK, and then I go to my blend mode, and I'm going to come down to overlay and see what that looks like, maybe soft light. I usually choose between these four: linear light, vivid light, hard light, soft light, and overlay. And depending on what I like, it's kind of my own choice. I can see that if I just move between vivid light and linear light, that that sage in the foreground's changing a little bit. And I kind of like it with that vivid light. Yeah, I kind of like the linear light is what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm gonna hit linear light. All right, and then I am done. Let me get out of the crop tool. I'm gonna save this as a JPEG and a PSD, and that's it.